This morning I want to do a demonstration. It's my first one. We'll give it a go. I want to make this card. As you can see, I did it yesterday. I'm reasonably happy with it. I'm going to change the colours slightly. So first of all, I like to get everything that I'm going to need all in one place before I start. So for this one, I have my rocker block. I've fished out the stamps that I'm going to use, the two little rabbits and the two sentiments, and I've put them onto a bigger rocker block so that I don't lose them. I've got my dies that I'm going to use for the little bit of cutting in this. I've got a pokey tool, although I shouldn't need it. My buttons for the decoration, and my paper. I'm going to try with these ones today and see how we get on. So I have my card base, which is a 5x7, which is about 12.5 centimetres by not quite 18 centimetres. Not terribly exact because these ones are imperial, not metric. But as I say, they're 5x7. Comes in the base kit. So let's get started. See how we do. First off, we're going to cut the paper. So starting with my backing sheet that I'm going to use, I'm going to want it just very, very slightly smaller than the card. I've got a Crafter's Companion cutter here, which I like to use. Obviously, whichever your favourite is, that will be the one you use. I like this one because it's got inches and centimetres on it. Now, I know my base card is going to be 7x5, so this one I'm going to line up, as you can see here, on the 6 7/8 mark there. So I shall just get a very small piece all the way around. Shows. It's 8x8 base card, which comes in the kit. Make sure you get it nice and level if you can. I've taken off two small pieces, keeping the card square to start with, because I'm going to need those for backing the sentiments later. So now take it down. It's 5, so it's going to be 4 7/8 right there. So I know I've got it level at the bottom and the top. Check that. No, that's fine. Now the next layer that you're actually going to die cut, you want to do the same again and take it down just that fraction again. So I'm now at 6 3/4 inches for the height. Oh, and I've put the paper in sideways. Okay, so we'll do the width first. So that's going to be 4 3/4 inches for the width. Nice and level. And 6 3/4 for the width. So there we go. Match that on again. And yep, that looks all right. That should do it. Okay. I'm going to cut up a couple more of these these little bits just for the backing on the sentiments. So I'll do them a couple of centimetres deep. There. That's one side. Keep those ones handy. Now, we're going to die cut the holes. I'm going to use the Gemini Junior plates and put them through my big Gemini, because they're not big cuts, so I don't need the full-size plates, and it just saves some of the warping that you tend to get with overuse. So I'm going to put both pieces of paper, because it's relatively fine. I'm not sure what weight it is, but it's not overly heavy. Stiff paper rather than solid card. Making sure I've got my pattern going the direction I want it to be on. And I'm going to take 2 small square dies, one side, the smallest of them. Now these actually came not in the Cute as a Button set, but in the one that followed the shaker cards, but I find it works really well because I can give an edge to the box that I'm cutting out, and it's roughly the same size as the one that came in the kit itself. So I've placed down my die on top of both pieces of paper. I'm cutting down into the base plate. I'm just going to put a little bit of low tack tape on, hold it in place because I don't want it to move, and then I'm going to put the magnetic sheet on top, plastic shim on top, and then the top cutting plate. And that's your sandwich for a basic die. So push that through. Love my Gemini smashing machine. As you can see, that's gone through without any difficulty whatsoever on both layers. So we're now going to have to do that again. So peel off this paper, line it back up, on your card again. Like so. I'm just going to use a little bit of tape there just to hold that in place so it can't move when I put it through the second time. So we want another box just about there, I think. Put the low tack tape back on. Magnetic shim, plastic shim, top plate, and put it through the machine. This is usually where I decide that my eyes must be scruffy because it's not as even as I thought it was going to be. Lift off my tape. Oh. Trying not to stick myself to it. Doesn't want to come off. Keep an old darning needle handy, just for lifting the tape, it seems to work quite well. That's one. Now, because I put the piece of tape on the card, it hasn't moved, which is excellent. Saves a lot of the worry on the last one. So now you put that one in, just line it up, decide where you want it, stick it down so it doesn't move, layer up your shims again, and back through the machine. I like to get any cutting that I'm going to do for a card, I tend to do all in the one go. I get it all done first off, rather than do some, put it to the card, do some more, add that to the card. I try and make sure I've got everything that I need before I start any of the assembly. I just find it's easier that way. I'm sure you've all got your own methods. Right. And that's that done. So that can now come off of there. I'll put that to one side with the base card. Now, have I... Drat. Not quite big enough, so I'll need another piece of the orange. Somewhere here. There we go. Not sure it is orange really, is it? Blood orange. So, I'm going to need, because I've decided to put a surround on the little apertures, I'm going to need to run them through the machine again. So, scissors, cut a piece off, just slightly bigger than the dies. And layer them up. So. I tend to get them right on the base plate, because that way you find you haven't wriggled them around at all when you move them from your cutting board to the base plate. So just, again, just a bit easier, I find. So that's that one there. And I've just made sure as far as I can that I've got a nice even ridge all the way around the inside, just to give me that little overlap on the outside of the apertures that we've got cut. And I'm going to want 3. There's one. So the second one. these little pieces that you're cutting out, keep them to one side, because you can keep them and use them in the makeup of other cards, or to add your own personalisation even to this one, so that your little rabbit maybe has a background that's other than white. It's entirely up to yourselves. But I keep all these pieces because they come in handy for backing sentiments on other cards, apart from anything else. It's best not to waste anything if you can avoid it. Measure twice, cut once, my granny used to say. These cards are going to go into my stash so that they can be personalised with a name later if I want to, or I have so many family birthdays each year. This piece I'll just trim. And that piece, that's waste, goes in my bin. And these I'll put in my box for use on something else. Right, plates away. Dies back on their magnetic sheet so I don't lose them. I don't know if you can see this, but what I've done is that an old sheet, one of the magnetic shims that really got past its best for the machine and was leaving marks on the card, I replaced it. So instead of just throwing away the old one, I've cut it up into pieces that I can stick the dies onto. Same as I keep a piece beside my workbench so that I don't, hopefully don't lose quite so many of the smaller dies when I'm using them. I've got a habit of knocking them off the table with my elbows. Right, now we have our base card. These are going to be round the little windows, as you can see, like that. Next thing to do will be the little rabbits. So I've got an old, I don't like to stamp onto the glass mat. I don't find I get a good result because it's too solid. So I've got a little foam pad that I used to use for the parchment craft, and it now does me as a stamping mat, especially for these little things because it's just exactly the right size. So I've got some, I think this is Crafter's Companion stamping card, which is 300-gram weight, which is brilliant. And I'm just going to stamp my little rabbits on it. Start with these front. I've got the nice small rocker block. Just because I find them easier, but if you've got acrylic blocks or however you do them yourselves, that's fine. And I'm using the Finesse waterproof die because I'm going to colour it later, so you know I don't want the die moving at all. Ink up my little rabbit. I've got a wet baby wipe just to wipe round so I don't get anything onto the card. And you just roll him on, and there you go. He doesn't need to be too dark because he's going to be cut round and coloured in. So, now for myself, you don't have to, but I like to do 2 of each design so that I can layer them, just give them a bit of height on the card. Just adds a bit of dimension to it. So I'll do 2 of the back, but I'll need 4 of the front, won't I, because there's 2 of them. Yep, so we'll do 4 at the front. These little characters are so cute. It's a nice thing about these stamps and rocker blocks, when you combine them together you get such a good print, and without too much hassle. Right, now I want to over the back view of this little rabbit, centering him up on my block as best I can. I'll do him twice as well. It's quite handy, this, for using up your pieces of scrap stamping card. After you've cut out something else, you've always got a little bit left, I find. So keep it, and it does for little things like this. There. So, there we go. I put them onto the bigger block just so I don't lose them. So I've got a habit of knocking things off my desk with my elbows. Now I'm going to colour these in. They don't take a lot of colouring. I'm using the Spectrum Noir art liners, and I'll use the orange, and I'll use the brush and the fine liner. Brush. And I'm just going to colour up the inside of his ears. And it's worked really well because these art liners, it's just the one set I've got. I wasn't sure how much I would enjoy doing it, so I've only got the one set. But I actually love it, so I may invest in another different set. But they're a really good match for the little buttons that came in the kit with these designs. So I'm just inking up the inside of his ears, like so. I only need to colour in 2 of the 4 because the other 2 are going on to the back just to give them a little bit of depth. Just a little bit of colour. The same again with the back vision. Colour up that little tiny piece of ear, and you just need to do the one, like so. Now I'm just using the fine liner just to put a little bit of colour into his nose. Don't know if it notices or not, but I know I've done it, so hopefully it does notice. There. Now all we have to do is fussy cut them. Not my favourite thing, I would have to say, and I'm not terribly good at it, but it's worth it, I think, in the end. When some things you just have to. You know, you can't get away with die cutting everything. So I'm just going to do that. a nice piece of scrap. Bring in another piece of scrap card. Actually, that one's thinner, I think. It's this one. And we want the sentiment, somebody loves you. Nice and even if we can on there. Making sure I've got the words going the right way, which always helps. I'll put it in the middle. There we go. And now the Hoppy Birthday, which will no doubt amuse the grandkids no end. Make sure my stamp's clean. There we go. What's that? Ink up out the way. I'll do that in a minute. So, now, first things first, bring your base card back on. So, and we're going to put our layers onto the base card. So I am using the all-purpose tacky glue in one of the small nozzle applicators, if it will come out. And I'm just right round, like so. Now I'm using the small tip applicator, although it's a relatively large space, simply because I don't want the card to appear damp from the glue, and it is a wet glue. So just get that lined up again, making sure my pattern's still going in the right direction. You've always got wriggle time with a wet glue, which is handy, so you can get it exactly where you want it. That's that one on there. Now the three little squares that I cut are just going to go around like so, and they just help hide anything that's not just 100% aligned. So again, just round with the wet glue. Line it up, wriggle it into place. Make sure it's down nice and firm. There we go. Just makes a nice little frame. Tidies up the edges. Oh. gives everything a nice neat finish. I don't know about that one though. Turn it round. That's better. There we go. Squeeze it onto where you want it. Same with this one. No. It's always one that wants to move about. There we go. And one on there, like so. And it just breaks up the card, gives it a slightly different finish. And we're going to line that one on there. Now for this I'm going to use the glue again, but just round the window apertures, like so. And then I'm going to use a tape pen for the rest, just so I can be sure that it's going down and staying down. Enough, I think. Make sure you've got your card with the opening on the right side and your design paper the right way up, and stick it on like so. Get in there. Double-sided tape does the same as the tape pen, it's just that was handy. Okay. Now, glue my little rabbits together. Making sure you get the coloured one on the outside. Line them up as best you can. So, just makes him nice and firm. Do the same with the next two. Go. To say my fussy cutting is not the best in the world, but we get there. Last one. Making sure I've got the painted image on the outside where it's going to be seen. And that's them. Now they can sit and dry for a second. Put pin back in. Now, because as I have said, I don't like fussy cutting, I'm going to use a couple of dies from my stash just to layer up these designs. So, bring down my cutting boards again. This is just a little tag die that I got. Can't even remember, I think it might have been a freebie on a magazine, you know. Can't remember offhand, but it's come in very handy. Nice, very simple little die. So, that's that. As you can see, I've left it. I only want the arrowed end at one end. I don't want it the other end. So I've overlapped the card like that. So it's cutting off the card. Take it off. If you've been lucky enough to get the new mini, or you have the little go, they would be ideal for these little bits and pieces. It just saves the wear on your big machine and your big plates. But we use what we've got. Pen. Now this one I think I'll do, yeah, I'll leave it on and we'll cut the arrow bit both ends on this one. So it's going to sit a bit nicer, I think. Just do things to suit yourself the way you like them. You all know best what works for you and what doesn't. A very good friend of mine said recently that she was struggling with matting and layering. She never quite gets the distances right. So I told her that I just leave it to the machine and let my cutter just use the markings that are on that. Sometimes it's slightly deeper than you want it to be, but it's not bad, and it makes life a lot easier than trying to use a ruler and a blade. Now we shall layer these up. I think I might do them in reverse. Put the flowery one down first, and then the plain one on top. Yeah, why not? That's what we'll do. So, stick this one on. Again, when you do this, it just gives the card that little bit more dimension, depth. Squeeze these out. set that on. I think I need slightly bigger scissors. Right, just try and match that round. Ooh, there we go. That one. I'm going to do the same again with these pieces. I find it's easier to stick them on and then cut round them, as long as you're careful. So there. Yep, and that one on there. Pin back in my glue. There's that one. Okay. See if I can get all my bits and pieces together now. We have the mats and layers, and the extra piece for the frames. I'm going to try the rabbits. We've got to put their little buttons on them. I think this is just such a good idea. I'm going to give them little orange tummies and tails this time around. I did white the last time. I'm just going to little orange ones this time. Ooh. Okay. Now I have noticed with these buttons that one side is very, very slightly rounder than the other side. So the side that is least rounded is the one that I'm sticking to the card, just so you've got more contact for it. And that seems to be that. Now I'm going to use my 3D glue, which is all bunged up on the end, never mind. Yep. I'm just a little bit, tiny little bits. Doesn't need a lot because we've doubled it up, and I'm just going to sit them in their little windows. So, it's just giving it that extra dimension in height. Makes it that little bit more interesting, I think. So, here we go. Now our signs. Yes. 3 little bits. You can see on that. And then we'll just put him on. This one only needs 2. I'll use because I've got it in my hand, I'll use the 3D for the buttons on the side there. Oh. And there we go. That's just a case of letting it dry. So there's today's one, which I think has turned out quite nicely. And wherever I've put it, here we are. And there's the one I did yesterday. So this one is a tent fold, and this one is a standard side fold. Not too shabby. Thank you very much for watching.